Now we are going to deliver a lecture about synapse. Synapse is the connection between two successive neurons. This connection helps to transmit a neural signal from the previous neuron to the next neuron. Synapses are classified into three types: exodendritic synapse, exosomatic synapse, and exoaxonic synapse according to their origin. First of all, we have to discuss about exodendritic synapse. When two successive neurons are attached with the axon terminal of the previous neuron and the dendron terminal of the next neuron is known as exodendritic synapse. But when two successive neurons are connected between the axon terminal of the previous neuron and the soma or cell body of the next neuron is known as exosomatic synapse. Finally, exoaxonic synapse. When the synapse is made up between the connection of two axon terminal of the two successive neurons is known as exoaxonic synapse. Hence, synapse is classified into three types according to their origin: exodendritic, exosomatic, and exoaxonic synapse. Exodendritic is the connection between two successive neurons. This connection is made of by the axon terminal of the previous neuron and the dendron terminal of the next neuron. In case of exosomatic synapse, the connection is stabilized by the axon terminal of the previous neuron and the cell body or soma of the next neuron. And in case of exoaxonic synapse, the connection is established between the axon terminals of the two successive neurons. According to the structure and function, synapses are also classified into two types: electrical synapse and chemical synapse. This is an electrical synapse. There are some gap junction between the two successive neurons. First of all, we have to discuss about this structure. This is the electron microscopic view of this junction. This electron microscopic view shows there is a gap between the two cells. This gap is known as synaptic cleft. But in case of electrical synapse, there are some gap junction between the two successive neurons. That means there are some cytoplasmic connection between the two successive neurons. A neural signal means high concentration sodium flow. When a neural signal arrives at the previous neuronal terminal, means the arrival of high concentration of sodium ion, and this signal is transmitted to the next neuron by transferring the electrolytes from the previous neuron to the next neuron through these electrical channels, through this cytoplasmic connection. Hence, this type of synapse is known as electrical synapse. On the other hand, there is another structure of synapse. There is a gap between the previous and next neuron. This gap is known as synaptic cleft, but there is no cytoplasmic connection. There is no gap junction. The previous neuronal terminal is known as synaptic cleft. This synaptic cleft contains some vesicles filled with some chemicals. These vesicles are known as synaptic vesicles. This synaptic vesicle contains adrenaline, noradrenaline, acetylcholine, etc. This is the postsynaptic terminal, and the synaptic cleft is filled with a fluid-like structure. This fluid is known as neurohumor. When an axon potential or a neural signal reaches to the presynaptic terminal, calcium ion channels are opened. Entry of calcium ion from extracellular fluid to the intracellular fluid stimulates to burst these synaptic vesicles, and in presence of calcium ion, the synaptic vesicle releases adrenaline and noradrenaline into the synaptic cleft. Now adrenaline and noradrenaline reaches to the postsynaptic terminal, and there are some receptors for their binding. Adrenaline and noradrenaline binds with their receptors and a depolarization occurs. Sodium ion channels are opened and sodium ion, huge amount of sodium ion enters into the intracellular fluid. An action potential is generated and this action potential is transmitted through the postsynaptic terminal as a neural signal. That means the neural signal is transmitted from the previous neuron to the next neuron with the help of the release of some chemical substances from the presynaptic terminal. Hence, this type of synapse is known as chemical synapse.